let's turn towards one thing that, we had said. Much of what we're talking about is a reaction in some respects to Jeff Flake coming out and in many ways being very performative and providing a meaningless gesture upon his realization that he couldn't get reelected. But the one impact that I think Jeff Flake's words do have is they continue to help the Democratic caucus maintain its ranks. We have yet to see an instance where a Joe Manchin, a Heidi Heitkamp, a Donnelly from Indiana, maybe a couple others, breaks ranks from the Democrats. And I think a big part of that is that when you get Republicans out there saying that Donald Trump is so toxic, even though he does well in those people's states, that it's just not worth it in their calculation to be associated because they'll get rid of their base. I mean, totally, right? If they start palling up with Donald Trump. Yeah. And there was a vote this week, shortly after Jeff Flake said, this is not normal. Do not normalize things. We can't act as if everything is normal. And then went on to a vote with the Republicans to overturn, to roll back a regulation that was imposed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that basically said, in situations like the Equifax breach, when Equifax was trying to get you to implicitly agree to arbitration, in other words, get rid of your right to sue them in a court of law for the breach, in offering you a product to deal with their breach, or when you open up a savings account at Wells Fargo, and then they go on and open up other accounts in your name without your permission, like they did, you attempt to sue them for doing so by banding together with other customers of Wells Fargo, because there were thousands upon thousands of them, and it's tough to find a lawyer who's going to help you with a $1,500 case. But you attempt to band with others. You won't be able to do that because when you signed up for that savings account, you agreed to an arbitration clause and you agreed to individual arbitration, not to any type of group redress. And the Republicans basically wiped out the regulation that said, hey, that's not fair to consumers. And this is, the worst part about this is because it was done under the Congressional Review Act, future administrations can't regulate this. It's going to take a 2/3 majority in both houses to reinstitute this law. And it's this is all a function of a special law that Newt Gingrich imposed back in '96 to basically undo the regulatory state. And it's working just like they planned, and it's horrible.
Well, it's a nightmare, and what the the scenario that you paint is really just so vivid. You had this moment this past week with a well-known Republican senator, a person considered to be of great integrity and personally well-liked by everybody on both sides of the aisle, comes out and makes a stem-winding speech against Donald Trump. He had Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, stands up afterwards and goes, "This is a man of integrity. I'm proud to know him." His Arizona cohort, John McCain, stands up then and says, "I am proud to know him. He's in the great tradition of Arizona Republicans, blah, blah, blah." Everybody in the press, they're all, "Oh, this is so beautiful. Look at what we're seeing here. These people are standing up and making they're making a statement, and this is so important." And it was just a couple of hours later that they go to the floor, and the Republicans in lockstep end up voting for the law that you just described, or voting for the repeal of the law that you just described by an absolute party line vote. I think Mike Pence actually broke the tie. Yep. Jeff Flake voted for it. John McCain voted for it. They all voted for this, and it is an absolute. This is down the line. pro-big business, pro-banks, pro-Wall Street. There is no other way to interpret this. And what's interesting about that, Donald Trump is going to sign this thing. I'm sure they're going to march around and they'll all laugh and cry and, have one of those big ceremonies because he's, doesn't get a chance to sign much as a president. And, everyone will continue to call Trump some kind of a populist and say that there's this populist movement in the Republican Party. Well, I think this proves that there isn't. More interestingly is what you brought up, because it does seem that there is a populist movement happening in the Democratic Party, where even those senators, you could have expected years ago, not even years ago, last year, for Democratic senators from places that have big banks and from, so red states and from places where, they could have easily gotten away with saying, we got to do this. These are my constituents. Joe Biden for years voted on behalf of banks and credit card companies because he was from Delaware. And everybody loved Joe Biden. He was our great liberal, leader, and nobody thought a thing of it. Now that divide is very clear. So, to me, I don't want to hear any more about Donald Trump being a populist or the Republican Party being populist.
I would add that the big push for this repeal of this regulation, now certainly Republicans have been trying it for a while. I think they passed it in the House a while back. But the big push for the repeal of this regulation came from Donald Trump's Treasury Department.
Yes.
And so, make no mistake about it. What you're saying is absolutely true. The Republican Party went lockstep with the president, and they were going with the president on this. And so, I don't know. I guess there's some, encouraging news that none of the Democrats broke ranks, and that may have, some positive implications for the budget and tax fight that is literally coming up in just days, more or less. But it also is just very bad news because under the Congressional Review Act, it only takes 50+1 in the Senate. But once that happens, this can only be reversed by a 2/3 majority in the Senate, and the House. And so I should say 50-50 in the House, but 2/3 majority in the Senate. And so, this protection is just gone. It's just gone now. And we got to take a break. When we come back, Digby, I want to also talk about another story that was incredibly disturbing. And again, interesting backstory on it. And that is of a 17-year-old girl, woman, whatever your perspective is on when a woman becomes a woman. But I would say a 17-year-old woman held by U.S. immigration authorities. She finds out she is pregnant after she is held by U.S. Basically internment officials, and she is allowed by a state judge to seek an abortion, but the Trump administration refuses to let her out of the shelter, in parentheses, that she is being held in.